Welcome to our webinar. If you're based in the Netherlands, I hope you had a really nice lunch with the broodjekas. So my name is Dee. I am a project manager here at Solarplaza, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, The Dutch PV Market Cruxes, Grid Capacity Solutions, and the Financial Outlook. So two main issues for the further development of solar PV in the Netherlands involve the timely obtaining of a grid connection point and the financing of smaller to medium-sized projects. Addressing this today would be our two speakers. So our first speaker is Roobek from DNV, who has assessed the problem of grid scarcity in key European countries in conjunction with Agora Energiewende. He will be joined by Hans de Heer, and you may address your questions to the both of them at the end of the presentation. Following that, we have Nienke Rijpstra from StartGreen Capital, who will share her experience on project financing in the Dutch solar market context. So, a quick introduction. If you didn't already know, at Solarplaza, we specialize in organizing solar conferences for attendees to share knowledge and network. We are quite good at it. So this is our 20th anniversary as well year, so it's quite nice. And this webinar is in the lead up to our Dutch conference on the 27th of May in, I think yes, it is in the Muziekgebouw in Amsterdam. We have 3 tracks, so grid, PPA, and renewable energy trading. And the speakers here today, you will also get to meet there in person. So some practical notes. If you have any questions, you can see there is a box either at the top of your computer or below if you are on web, and you can address any questions at all to us, and I will ask them to our speakers today. If there are any technical questions, you can also use the same chat box and just say, hey, please help, and we will help you. At the end of the conference, you will get all the presentation slides. It will also be recorded as well and uploaded to YouTube. So without further ado, I would like to invite Rogier to take the floor from DNV. Rogier, the floor is yours. You may turn on your camera and your microphone.
Yes, Dee, thank you so much, and a pleasure to be here. And thanks also for all the participants that are joining today. So I would like to introduce you to the main outcomes that we did in a study for Agora Energiewende. A study is called Boosting Flexibility in Distribution Grids, as you could see. And we really would like to bring to you the key insights from this report. I would like to stress that the webinar from Agora Energiewende is expected to be on the 10th of April. So please refer to Agora Energiewende in this respect for further notice. So let's dive into the details, but first let's start with a short introduction. So my name is Rogier Roobek, Senior Consultant in the Energy Markets and Strategy team of DNV in the Netherlands. Have been part of DNV for quite a few years now. I've been working on a variety of topics as a project manager, but also subject matter expert on hydrogen demand-side flexibility, as well as system integration. And I've been also working on a variety of topics, including techno-economic assessments, but especially also a bit more market analysis, as well as, of course, the topic for this webinar, which is basically the boosting flexibility. So basically demand-side flexibility in distribution networks. Please, Hans, could you also say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rogier. So my name is Hans de Heer. I am principal consultant within DNV. I've been working at DNV for over 20 years. Currently business development manager within the Department of Markets and Regulation. And I'm leading our practice on the topics of both demand-side flexibility and congestion. Handing back to you, Rogier.
Thank you so much, Hans. Yeah, so let's also give you a short introduction if you don't know us yet. So we are DNV, so we're part of DNV. We're actually specifically in the Energy Markets and Strategy team. But of course, DNV is a global company with various practices on the shipping part, on business area energy, but also on software and digital solutions, as well as management system certification. So that's the most classic type of business that we did. We have been around for 160 years, 15,000 global employees, over 100,000 customers, and we also have a significant amount of our annual revenue that's being spent on R&D. Very shortly, also on the services that we offer on the domain of flexibility. Perhaps I can ask you, Hans, to say a few words about this one.
Yeah, sure. And it's mainly those four categories you see here on the slides. On one hand, we advise on market design, so how to make use of flexibility for wholesale markets, for congestion management, for balancing. We look at what mechanisms, so what are the routes to market for flexibility. We support on implementing flexibility. This could be advice for system operators, it could be advice for market parties, how to make use of flexibility. And finally, product design, and this is mainly products of those system operators, either balancing or congestion management. Designing them, but also verifying the delivery of the flexibility. And yeah, that's just a short summary.
Thank you so much. So now we would like to share with you the key insights from our research that we did actually for Agora Energiewende. So we'll start actually with the context, then we'll actually go into the challenges, the various solutions out in the flexibility domain, and then we'll also go to our findings and recommendations to both NRAs, so national regulatory authorities, as well as DSOs. So as part of this project, we first started with identifying to what degree the issue of grid scarcity is a problem throughout Europe. So we actually conducted various interviews with a total of 7 DSOs in various European countries, in which we first wanted to understand what is really the severity of the issue. And we basically see that 6 out of 7 DSOs interviewed already report that they have significant issues of grid scarcity at both the HV and MV grid level. And 4 out of 7 experience it actually at the LV level. When we actually asked them about the extent of the issue, we basically see that 6 out of 7 DSOs, they both experience it both at the feed-in as well as the offtake level for all the grids that they have in place. And finally, for the urgency of the issue, we basically see that they also expect this problem to extend even further into the low voltage grid level. So I think this is, as a context, already quite a pressing result, and really action is needed in this regard. If we look into the key challenges as part of these issues that they're experiencing in their grid, we basically see a couple of key drivers driving this grid scarcity. So when we interviewed them, we basically see that, first of all, permitting and timing is a key driver for these grid scarcity issues, as indicated by the DSO. Secondly, we actually also see that the financing is a key driver, or the lack of financing is a key driver of grid scarcity. Thirdly, we actually see that a lack of manpower is a key driver. And finally, we actually also see that limited TSO-DSO coordination is part of the 4 key drivers of grid scarcity. And we actually also see that when we look at the solutions, that traditional grid reinforcements are not sufficient to alleviate these issues. On top of that, there is a couple of key drivers actually mentioned here on the right side of this slide. They we actually also see that regulatory incentives and the readiness level of several DSOs are simply lagging behind still a bit. We also see issues in the supply chain. And finally, we actually see that R&D and digitization within those organizations is not ready actually in some degrees when it comes to implementing further solutions, but actually also to implementing further grid reinforcements. So now when we actually move into the solutions, we actually also collaborated and interviewed the DSOs when it comes to what are the solutions available. Well, we basically see that when we focus on the demand-side flexibility domain, we identified a couple of key solution spaces. So we see connection and connection rights as a first solution space. Secondly, we see network tariffs as a second solution space. Thirdly, we see the service and market facilitation. And finally, we actually see the rules-based approach. So for all these solutions, we actually looked at what timeline suits these solutions for these DSOs. And we really tried to come up with an integrated picture here. And we actually also dived into what the maturity is of these solutions. And that's what we try to map here on this image, or in this graph, where we basically see that many of these solutions are actually at quite an infant stage, so either in the R&D phase, at the plant stage, or are slowly being developed towards 2030. So we basically see, concluding from this slide, that the solutions are at least apparent. So they are actually within scope. So they're basically already identified, but they're not yet very mature when it comes to the implementation. So now that we actually look into the key findings of our research, we see also on the solution space that the maturity of these solutions, only one DSO indicated out of 7 that they're really at the far end of the maturity spectrum. So there's only one DSO within the total set of 7 DSOs, which was actually Enedis, so the DSO in France, which actually indicated that they were able to already optimize the solutions in their grids. So I think that's a very positive example in that case. So when we actually move to the findings and key messages of our report, we basically see that there is a couple of key parties that are playing in this ecosystem. First of all, we have the customers that are typically actually uninformed. That's what we experience from our research. Secondly, we have the market parties that face an uncertain outlook, that you can see here also on the right-hand side. Then you have the national regulatory authorities, the NRAs. And finally, you have the DSOs that actually experience insufficient incentives. So this is really the ecosystem in which we're playing, and also the key issues that we see at all these different players. That brings us to the final slide, and that is the key recommendations that we identified and defined for both the NRAs as well as the DSOs. So let's start with the NRAs here on the left-hand side. We see, first of all, that we need the NRAs to incentivize DSOs to significantly accelerate the implementation of these solutions, because sometimes there is simply a matter of incentives lacking at the DSO level. Then secondly, we actually see that we really would need to encourage and fairly compensate these DSOs. So that's really a key role here to take up from the NRAs, or by the NRAs, I should say. Then we actually also see that it's very important that the NRAs develop the regulatory frameworks and actually also really focus on how this transposition could work from a European perspective towards a national perspective. And then finally, they should also entice customers even more to unlock their flexibility. When we look at the recommendations that we defined in this report for the DSOs, we first see that it's very important that they understand what the problem is and to what extent the grid scarcity problem is apparent in their grids. So that will be the first recommendation towards the DSOs. The second recommendation would be towards the DSOs is that they understand and quantify this even further, but actually also specifically tailored for each solution. Then we actually would recommend the DSOs to actually formulate a strategy for implementing the different solutions and really build up a solution space. So basically a set of solutions that are applicable in certain situations. And then finally, we actually also see that it's advised towards these DSOs that they better understand the solutions, but actually also first better understand their own capabilities in order to implement those solutions. So this brings me to the end of our key findings from this report, and we would like to open the floor here to questions to this specific part of the presentation. And afterwards, we would like to hand over to Nienke from StartGreen to have the finance perspective in place. So please.
Thank you, Rogier and Hans. So we have a few questions already. So the first one is, how can it be that the DSOs and the TSOs are so poorly aligned, and how can that be improved?
Well, of course, it's qualification that they're poorly aligned, but surely we see a room for improvement. And yeah, why? Well, I would say traditionally there was little need for this alignment. Traditionally, especially the DSO was not actively controlling its grid, was not monitoring it. There was no need to do so because typically load was very well predictable, was very repetitive, and there was little interaction needed. But now we see with, of course, a lot of distributed generation, a lot of volatility in the distribution fields and grids, and a lot of interdependencies between transmission and distribution, that there is a need both in the operational time frame but also in the planning time frame for this close coordination. And that is something that is under development. Some countries are progressing faster than others, but surely we're not there yet. And that is a process that takes time because it also requires IT changes. So it's not straightforward. It is about two separate companies that need to work on their grids that are connected, and there is no best practice around, I would say. Yeah? So it's also a bit of maybe trial and error even for those system operators.
So when you said there is now some best practice around, could you elaborate on that?
No, I said there's little best practice around because
Okay.
I mean the energy transition, we're only at the start of it, and there's no country that has already completed the energy transition, so to speak. And so yes, I mean if you look for coordination, I think GB is making steps, Great Britain are making steps, but some other countries, of course, also some are looking for different solutions. It's difficult. And that's also one of the things we found in this study. For all those solutions, there are no real best practices or clear silver bullets that you can implement tomorrow. That's one of the challenges.
And I would just like to follow up. So what would this mean then going forward? Is this something that we build iteratively together, or what are some clear steps for, given that right now there are no best practices?
Well, I mean, on this topic, the coordination, that is, of course, the responsibility of the system operators. I think only the regulators can make sure that they progress fast enough on that topic, because we believe there is that better coordination will create more grid capacity and will allow more customers, more renewables, more low carbon technologies to be connected. That is only something the regulator, I think, can really stimulate. That should happen with a high pace.
Okay, thank you. I see two questions here that I will bring us back to, because I think they address this slide. And one is with regards to the NRAs. So there was a follow-up question with how can the NRAs entice customers to unlock their flexibility? So what strategies here can be used on stimulating it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Also there, of course, is no perfect answer. But I mean, what the ecosystem shows that you can have perfect solutions, perfect regulations, but if customers do not participate, then it will not fly. And this is something customers until recently, and we're not, of course, only talking about residential customers like you and me, but also industrial and commercial customers. They were not used to be an active customer. And that's so it starts probably with education. It starts with information. It starts with explaining the transition that we are starting, the energy transition, and the role of customers in general. But it also is about incentives, making sure there are proper incentives for customers to participate. And that, for example, investments that are typically needed to be able to participate, there's a return on those investments. And so it's I would say it starts with communication, it starts with information, but of course also the financial aspects and economic aspects should be taken into account.
Okay. And it would be for the NRAs to incentivize the customers then?
Well, of course, it depends. It could also be part of the market design. And of course, also there, of course, that's also government, but often the NRA is involved there as well. Make sure that the market design sufficiently supports and incentivizes customers for participating. And of course, removing barriers, and that was also one of the elements observed here, removing barriers for customers to participate, which could be regulatory barriers as well.
All right, thank you. I believe that those are the questions, and if there are more, I will address them to you after as well. But I wanted one final maybe key message or key takeaway from both of you. If there was one sentence, if you could sum it up, and if you have an envision of a future where the grid is where it should be, what would that look like from both of you?
Rogier, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a matter of that we need all sort of resources that we have, right? So we both need traditional grid investments as well as the solutions. So the alternative solutions that we just highlighted also in this presentation. I think it's really a matter of utilizing all the resources and opportunities we have.
Thank you.
Yeah, then I'd like to add this element of the ecosystem. And I mean, this is not a problem that you can solve with two parties, with the one that is having the problem and the other that has the solution. All those stakeholders need to play a role. And it seems that they are waiting for each other. So we have to think about solutions, mechanisms, regulations, incentives that look at the full ecosystem and make sure that all players in the ecosystem can take the required step at the same time to make sure those flexibility solutions, mechanisms really provide the value that they inherently have, but will not show if there is not a holistic approach to it.
All right. Well, thank you, Rogier.
Maybe to add to that, of course, if there's any further questions, feel free to reach out to us either via LinkedIn, of course, or via our personal communication chains actually indicated here as well.
Yes. So as they said, you could have their details there. We put the slides, which is perfect. So thank you, Rogier and Hans. And now I would like to give the floor to Nienke, where we look at the financial outlook by StartGreen. So Nienke, you have the floor. You can turn on your camera and your microphone.
Thank you, Dee, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our financial outlook here. First, I wanted to give you a proper introduction about myself. Nienke Rijpstra, I'm an investment director at StartGreen Capital. I have a financial background and started my career at ING Bank. Most of the time I spent there in acquisition finance. And after 7 years, I made the switch to renewable energy finance. Still very happy about that. And currently I work, I'm part of the management team of the Energiefonds Overijssel, which is one of the teams we manage at StartGreen Capital. It's the fund of the province of Overijssel, and the fund is being used to invest in renewable energy projects and the circular economy. And currently we have about 250 million of assets, which are both loans and equity investments. And my focus has been mostly on solar. That's also why I'm here. And recently I'm spending also a lot of time on battery projects. Well, maybe some of you already know StartGreen Capital and our sister company, One Planet Crowd. But for those who don't, I will give a short introduction about what we do. StartGreen Capital was founded in 2006 and is an impact fund manager, focusing on 3 main pillars. That's renewable energy, a circular economy, and diversity. And we've currently 6 funds under management and almost 500 million of assets under management. I already spoke shortly about the Energiefonds Overijssel, where I'm mostly working for. We also have PPAs, which is the local energy fund of the province of North Holland. And we have a couple of VC funds, of which Borski is the largest one, focusing mainly on diversity and investing in companies with female founders. And then we have One Planet Crowd, our crowdfunding platform, which I will go a bit deeper into. It's a sister company which has merged recently with Investor. That way it became the largest European crowdfunding platform focused on sustainable energy in Europe, having presence in Germany, Austria, Finland, and the Netherlands, and having access to over 117,000 investors in Europe. And that way also investors from Finland can invest in projects in the Netherlands and vice versa. And well, so far in the Netherlands, we financed over 300 projects with 28,000 investors. Well, that was a brief introduction on what we do, but now I want to go into the main topic, a financial outlook and the challenges that we as a financial party see in the market. And of course, afterwards going into the opportunities, which may be a bit more fun. The challenges we see, especially I think in maybe a new kind of challenge we see, is the political climate. The oppression against larger solar parks is increasing. And in the province of Overijssel, it's even the case that there is a ban on new permits for solar parks larger than 2 hectares, which basically means that it's only possible to realize new projects on roofs, water, or close to main infrastructure projects. And I do have the feeling that this might spread through the rest of the Netherlands, which can be a huge challenge to the solar industry. And it's mainly due to the fact that the current political parties think that the agricultural land that we have in the Netherlands should not be used for solar, but for agriculture. And well, on the other hand, we have a huge energy transition that still has to be completed. So I think, yeah, this is a huge challenge in the industry. Well, another huge challenge is net congestion. I think Rogier and Hans already went quite into this topic. Well, in fact, I think there are a lot of projects which are now stuck as they do not get access to the grid, especially in Overijssel, where now there's a ban on large solar parks. We see that there are quite a lot of a large amount of rooftop projects that can be realized, but those are stuck to net congestion. Well, maybe even with technical solutions or batteries or working together in the ecosystem, as Hans said, it might even be possible to realize them, but everybody, I think a local owner of a rooftop is not looking through all these solutions. So I think there's quite a lot of work, as mentioned in the presentation by Rogier, on that respect. And I think also changes in legislation are essential in order to realize those alternative solutions. And then thirdly, something that we see in case there is a permit and there's net congestion, that return on investment is under pressure, mainly affected by raising interest rates that are still remaining high, inflation levels, lower subsidies, and lower energy prices. And especially in the Netherlands, also insurance rates went up due to the large amount of copper theft. I think the only positive point is that panel prices have gone down recently. And in fact, we've seen at StartGreen a couple of projects last year that, well, got everything in order to build, but they did not go through because there was not an interesting return in the end. And even for local cooperatives, which we work with quite a lot, which maybe take a lower return because they want to realize renewable energy in their area, they will not invest if there's a 25-year investment period. They have to get a loan, and well, maybe there's hardly any return after all. Yeah, that's basically not going to fly. So that's well, quite an area where we trying to structure flexible financing structure to make sure that yes, investment can be realized, but in not in all cases that's possible. So that's an important one as well. Then looking at the side of opportunities, because there are some options in order, well, especially on the, I think on the permit side, it's quite hard to influence as a finance party, but on the business case side, there are some opportunities. On the one hand, we see a lot of developers going into battery energy storage systems on existing solar parks, on existing grid connections, as there's pressure on the business case of solar parks. There's more moments of overproduction and negative energy prices. And with batteries, it's possible to benefit from volatility in the market. And as there is already an existing grid connection, this can be an interesting additional business model for the developer. The financing structure for batteries is not really set in stone yet. I think every party and every bank is still sometimes looking a bit differently at batteries or different business models behind the batteries. I think from a finance perspective, it would also be very interesting if you would realize a new solar park and add a battery on that grid connection to finance it as a whole. I think most of the traditional banks do not want to mix the risk, but I think it can be quite beneficial as you have a quite lower risk solar park with a higher risk battery. And if you merge those business models, I think you can in the end maybe end up with a higher leverage and a lower interest rate overall than when you would finance those separately. Then next, for existing for projects, we see also that PPAs are coming up. It's still not as big as in the wind market, but we do see it more and more. And I think that's if you're able to find a PPA party with a good price, you're able to increase your leverage on the project compared to a project where you will leverage on the subsidy levels, which are mostly a bit lower or quite a lot lower. And the only challenging part here is that especially banks are quite critical on the counterparty risk. So if you have a PPA with a large corporate, that will not be a problem. But if you're looking more at growth companies, which still can be very interesting, take-off parties, they can be quite critical, or guarantees that can be required. And I think as StartGreen Capital, we try to be a bit more flexible on that and looking not only at the numbers, but also at the potential of the company and the cooperation together with the energy project. And then you also have trading contracts, which are a bit different than selling your energy just directly to an energy company, but selling through companies like Innova, selling maybe 30% forward, and then selling the rest on day ahead and intraday markets, and also entering into curtailment in order to obtain higher income compared to traditional contracts. The only thing is that's quite hard to finance on any upside compared to traditional contracts. But as a developer, it can increase your return on investments if you're able to outbeat the general contract. And then thirdly, we have local participation. And maybe that's not always, I'm not sure if everybody perceives it as an opportunity, but I think the opportunity lies in the fact that there's still not really a blueprint on how to embed local participation, while most municipalities and permits do require up to 50% of local or financial participation. And I think especially the alignment between the developer and the cooperatives can be quite challenges. There are different interests, different backgrounds. And as mainly our crowdfunding platform, One Planet Crowds tries to be a linking pin between those parties and to provide structures that really can help the financial participation, also benefit the developer with a smooth process, and benefit the local participants that they also get something back for a solar park or a windmill in their, so to say, backyard. For example, we recently helped out on Wind Park Friesland, where we were able to structure a 10 million bond, where all the inhabitants of Friesland were able to participate in this project and also get some return back for the wind park in their area. Well, I summed up a bit how we can offer finance solutions for, not only solar projects, but energy projects. We offer multi-asset class, so we do equity, junior and senior, starting from already 200,000 and One Planet Crowd. and 2 million at StartGreen Capital, up to 10 to 20 million. We try also to be flexible on structure, on repayment schedules, tenor, and one planet crowd can also finance in the development phase. And finally, I want to give you an example case on how we together structured a deal, actually a floating solar park. This floating solar park is situated in the area of Zwolle, and hereby we helped the energy cooperative Blauvinger Energy to actually buy the solar park from the developer, and we structured a senior loan together with a regular bank, ASM Bank, and the Energiefonds Overijssel. Energiefonds Overijssel provided a junior loan, afterwards One Planet Crowd was able to offer access to the local participants to take over part of that junior loan in order to let them participate financially as well. And the equity was provided mainly by Energiefonds Overijssel and by the local cooperative. And we have an agreement in which every now and then the local cooperative gets the opportunity to buy a bit more of the shares from us, so that in the end, over time, the project will be completely in the hands of the local cooperative. And then finally, I put down my contact details as well, and my colleague Jacoba, who's not here on the call, but she is mainly contact person for One Planet Crowd, so I've included her here as well. And then I would like to thank you for your attention, and happy to answer any questions on the finance market for solar projects.
Perfect. So thank you, Nienke. We do have a few questions, so I'll start with one of it. So one of the slides you mentioned, one of the challenges was the low return on investment. The question is, what is your take as a financier on this, and has it impacted your portfolio?
That's a good question. I think most of our portfolio is loans, so that means that we are not that much affected. But I think it also puts pressure on the interest rates on loans, because that's also a big part of the cost of a solar project. So it puts pressure on the interest rates in order to make the project happen. And of course, if the returns are too low, there's also no financing, so we cannot help out either. And I think for us, it means that we have looked also together with local cooperatives to projects, and we have to, and it meant that sometimes we really had to say no, because the return on investment for us was too low to help them buy the project.
Okay. Maybe a follow-up. I'm just curious, what happens then who steps in to help? Is that maybe a government body? But yeah, what happens then?
Well, I think basically in most of the case, then the project will be placed on hold. So okay. I think there were some projects that came back again because of the solar panel prices dropping. Or I've seen parties then went looking for PPA parties, so in order to improve the income. So if they're able to do that, then we can go back to the table. But it can also mean that the project really does not get realized.
Okay, that's clear. I also have another question. So it's about insurance, a bit of a, I think, worried take as well. So the question is, insurance is quite a big topic in the NL. Will it reach a point in the future where solar parks become uninsurable?
Well, that's I think a difficult question for me to answer. I'm not an insurance company, of course, and I don't think they get, that's my personal feeling. I don't think they get insurable, but I think insurance companies get way more stricter about cameras, security, so it gets way more expensive, and they're going to be way more strict on what you need to do to prevent any theft, and of course their rates are going up. So I think they're going to make it a lot more difficult to insure the project. Yeah.
Right.
And then maybe also, like, I can imagine that your own risk can go up severely. That could also happen, of course. That there's more risk on the side. They're going to put more risk on the side of the project. That could happen, I think.
Okay, that makes sense. And one more regarding opportunities. So you mentioned like battery storage as well as one of the opportunities going forward. Do you see any other opportunities with other technologies like power to heat and, for example, hydrogen?
Yeah, well, there's, I think, definitely a lot projects in development of hydrogen. I've not seen direct. I've seen a lot of few developments into hydrogen, but that's really basically the hydrogen project itself. I think if you develop hydrogen on a very large scale, you're gonna need, you really need loads amount of energy, and I think wind is more interesting for that.
Okay, well, thank you, Nienke, for your answers to the audience's questions. I have a final one now for me, maybe also more future forward, more, and I also see no more further questions on the other presentation too. So maybe we can end with you. For example, the question would be, if we were to do a presentation 10 years from now on the same topics of financing, what do you think it would be framed around for the Netherlands?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, I think it's quite hard to say what the challenges would be. I would hope that we are a lot of steps further in the energy transition, and maybe all the roofs that are we completed our solar and wind ambitions, and maybe we move completely over to new technologies. I think the next big thing is going to be batteries, and I think the next big thing after that is going to be hydrogen. So maybe solar is not our main topic anymore. That could be. It's now our main focus as for example, Energy Fund Overijssel, but I can imagine that other technologies are going to take over.
All right. Well, thank you for your answer. So with that, I would like to say thank you to everyone joining. Thank you to also Rogier and Hans. You can turn your camera on to say bye if you'd like. And I just want to share that Nienke, Rogier, and Hans will be at our conference in May as well. And to say thank you for joining the webinar, you can use this discount code. So with this, I would like to wish everyone a good afternoon, and thank you for everyone attending. If you have further questions, you can reach out to the webinar speakers directly. They left their details. And yeah, thank you very much and have a great Wednesday. Bye. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.